Hey, everybody. Can you hear me? Hopefully everybody hears me just fine. We're going to go ahead and get started here in just a minute. Had a little bit of technical difficulties with my microphone, apparently. I hate when that happens. And we'll get that going. Give me a thumbs up in the chat if you can still hear me. Okay. Who do we have out here tonight? Well, let's see. We've got Christine. Thank you for coming out and joining the conversation. Misty, Mrs. Wayne, thank you very much. We appreciate you being here. Jason, of course, thank you. And so I've got a great guest for you tonight. Her name is Suzie, and Suzie Singleton. She is an Army veteran, and she's going to be coming on here in just a couple minutes. Jim, hello. Welcome. Okay, can y'all hear me? Give me a thumbs up in the chats if you would. All right, let's see here. I see a yap, not a thumbs up. Does that mean you can hear me? All right. Okay. Well, I think, did everybody have a good weekend up to this point? Hopefully everybody did and enjoyed themselves. All right. Without further ado, wonderful. You can hear me. Everybody can hear me. Great. So without further ado, I am going to bring on my friend, Suzie Singleton. So make sure you give her a warm welcome, please. Hey, Suzie, how are you?
I'm good, Curly. How are you?
I'm doing good. Did you have a good weekend so far?
I have. I've been studying all weekend.
Oh, that's not fun. Just saying, that is not fun.
I'm making progress. So, it's all good.
Good. So, Suzie, so what we do is we just have a conversation. I will go wherever you take me. And, we'll talk about, kind of what got you into the military and resources that you had getting out of the military, if you had any, or if you know of any, for any other veterans that might be listening. Jova Q, hey, thank you for joining tonight. So let's start with a little bit about your family life, growing up. What was that like?
Very different. We moved around, never lived in one spot more than 3 years.
And why was that?
My mom was attracted to military men. Yeah. So my dad was Navy. And then my younger sister's father was Air Force. And then my stepfather, last one, was Army.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. And
when they marry you off at 13.
Wait, you or your mom?
My mom.
Okay, just checking.
Mississippi, gotta love it.
Oh my gosh. So you moved around a lot. I'm sure that probably was tough trying to make and keep friends and
yes.
Yeah, and just go in all different places. So were you on bases with these military when your mom was dating these guys?
I don't remember a whole lot. I think we lived off housing. Yeah, off base housing.
Okay.
But I went to military doctors. So even when we were living in Memphis, I had to go to the Naval Air Station, when we got sick.
Okay. And so here you are, you're in high school, you're a senior. What made you decide to go into the Army?
Well, I don't like boats. Well,
that's fair.
I don't like confined places. So, it's one thing to be in a tank, which I was a licensed tank driver. You could climb up out and run pretty quick. But when you're on a boat, you're stuck. So
You are.
yes.
Very much so you are.
Yeah. And it's actually funny. So I had actually was looking at Air Force. I was going to do accounting in the Air Force because I'd already had a couple of accounting courses in college. And you know what my real life job is.
I do.
They asked me to lie because I couldn't get in for testing. I couldn't get a basic training as quick with the Air Force as I could with the Army. So they wanted me to flip flop and lie. And
Oh, wow.
I know. And I'm just like, whoops, no, I don't lie. And I went Army. And so I became a linguist. I took the test for the Army, and they said I could do anything but motor pool. So then I took a language test, and so I got my choice of Russian, German, or Czech. And I thought I might get more use out of German.
Mm-hmm.
I did German.
And you speak German then? Do you still speak it?
I used to. No. I still sing a couple of songs in German, but I'm not fluent by any means. I used it a little when I went to visit my daughter when she was doing a study abroad in Geneva. So
wow.
We went all over the place while we were there. And so I got us around in Germany.
That's a good mom. That's a really good mom. Because, yeah, I took a couple of years Spanish, and I mean, I could probably find the bathroom, but that's probably about the extent of it. So hang on just a second. I'm going to close this door here. I forgot to close it.
That's okay.
There we go. Okay. So here it's now you've signed your papers for the Army. And how did that go?
I signed up in April, and I joined a reserve unit in Memphis, 302nd Seawee in Memphis. And I actually drilled with them every weekend. They taught me a lot of stuff to prep me for basic training. I did 2 weeks summer duty there on site. They had an extra set of boots, which came in very good, very handy in basic training because that was the pair that was always shiny.
You have to have a pair.
Had a complete set of uniform. Yeah. So it was nice. And then I didn't go basic until August.
So you signed in April and you went in August.
Mm-hmm.
So tell us all a little bit about your basic training, how that went.
It went pretty good. I was apparently in an experimental platoon. I don't know why. Having been around military a lot, I knew that going to basic training, they were supposed to tell you what the expectations were, how you were supposed to make your bed, set your lockers up, where to get toilet paper, where to get stuff. And after a couple of weeks while we were waiting to fill up, and I'm watching the other units drilling, learning stuff, we didn't get taught anything. And so I went to the drill sergeant, and I was like, this is not the way it's supposed to be. I know better than that.
And here you are in basic training, going to tell your drill sergeant what for.
Yeah. So he made me a platoon leader. Yeah. And that's when I found out we were an experimental platoon, that until we started asking questions, we were going to have issues. And then the other drill sergeant didn't speak English very well, much at all. So I don't know. I think he was on some exchange program with the military, but that was, he would just chew us out. We know we were getting chewed out. Didn't understand a word he was saying. So I
How
had to
hard was it
go.
to keep a straight face?
Well, I'd already gotten dropped a few times for smiling. So I tried very hard not to smile. And I learned asking questions got you in trouble because it got you picked. So, you know, uh, yeah. So I went up, I had to go up to, we had a drill sergeant on the second floor named Diamond. And so to go on his floor, you had to do diamond push-ups.
Okay.
And to enter his floor. And so I went up there to find out, can somebody show us how we're supposed to set up our wall locker, hang our uniforms, placement? Where do we get toilet paper, paper towels, all that good stuff? And so I had to give them 20. And, but they eventually showed us how, but it was just crazy to me to be in an experimental platoon like that.
And what was the experiment?
To see if we'd get it without somebody breathing down our neck telling us what to do. So all the other platoons, when they opened up their gifts from home, they would get dropped, and a lot of people sent stuff. Not ours. Oh, you got Kool-Aid? Bring it for the party. Oh, you got Tootsie Rolls? They sent me Tootsie Rolls and Kool-Aid and a big jar of peanut butter. Yeah.
I know those are just sending anything I know to my son when he was in boot was like absolutely nothing.
Yeah. So, I was asking, are we allowed to have this? And he's like, well, not really. And I was like, he goes, but I won't get you. I said, but who will? He goes, well, when the commanders come through and do their walkthrough, that's when you got in trouble. So I'm like, here, take it. Although I did keep the Tootsie Rolls. I hid those. I did. Oh my gosh. Yeah. And everybody knew I had it because I passed them around. To everybody.
Well, they're not going to tell if you're sharing.
Right. But so they came through and I stuck them in an iron box because I had iron to iron my uniform. And I had it in the iron box. And the commander, I guess he knew we were an experimental platoon. He goes, I'm looking through here. I know y'all got candy. And he pushes the iron out of the way to get to and pushes the box out of the way and then dumps my feminine hygiene products all over the room because he goes, this is where women like to hide them. He goes, girls always like to hide stuff in here thinking you're not going to look. And luckily I did not hide anything in there. It was in the iron box.
That he'd already moved.
That he should have felt the weight of because I think it had a jar of peanut butter in it too. Yeah. And the M&Ms or Tootsie Rolls.
Tootsie Rolls. Oh my gosh. I know what I'm getting you for Christmas.
Yeah, I can still eat those.
That's a good thing.
I know.
Oh, that's funny. So what was your mom's thoughts about you joining the military?
My whole family was behind me 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was always, the one in the family telling others to do the right thing. I was very organized. I followed the rules. But I knew I needed to grow up. And I thought that would be a good way to do that and give back to my country.
Which is awesome. And thank you for your service, by the way. I know I didn't mention that at the start of this, but
that's okay.
Certainly appreciate every veteran and all of the sacrifices that all of you have had and the things that you've, done for us as a country as a whole. So thank you for that. So we talked some then about your basic training. And so did you learn then like how to shoot, all of that? What was it? Was there anything, I guess, that the other platoons that were not experimental did as far as some of the field stuff that you guys didn't do?
We did the same. I mean, we participated with them in all the exercises and
Okay.
marches and learning stuff. I messed my knees up from all the marching. Even though I had been running, I could do 15 push-ups when I got there because I had been training, and um, so half of basic training I was going through on crutches, and so when I didn't know what was going on, but they pulled me out, sent me somewhere at midnight to go. I had to go take a test. I
At
didn't know what
midnight.
was going on. You know, at that point, you just do what you're told. So you go take a test, and then I had to go do a panel board also at midnight. Um, and then I had to go retake the physical test. And so, but I wasn't running, so I did a no running profile at that point. And so I had to do a walking test. I had to walk 2 miles in a certain amount of time, which I did, and I kicked butt on the push-ups and sit-ups. But I got the soldier leader of the cycle.
Nice.
And they I heard after the fact that there was, scuttle about giving it to me because I was on a profile. But even with my profile, I had all the scores. So
Nice.
I was kind of excited about that.
Well, you should be. That's something to be really proud of.
Yeah. But yeah, the last thing I had to do was the I'm drawing a blank. Uh, obstacle course. And
Oh,
one of the
okay.
commanders said, "You can't do that on crutches. They go, y'all need to take her crutches away. She can't go through that on crutches." And so, in the military, you always have a buddy. And so I went through with my buddy and I just carried her weapon. And so when I needed to, I used her weapon to get me through. But I could pretty much do everything. But there were a couple of things, where my knee was hurting pretty bad by the time I got done.
So was there anything that they were able to do for you before you got out of boot with or basic with your knee?
They offered to recycle me. And by then, I was 7 weeks into it. I was like, oh, hell no.
Yeah, no, I would
No,
be the same. I would
I'm
absolutely be the
good.
same. And can you imagine having to go through all that again? And you
No.
would probably not be in an experimental platoon at that time.
Yeah. Yeah. And they might not have liked my smart mouth. So,
Ah,
although it was very respectful, but yeah. When I went to AIT, of course, that was long because I had to go to language school and then AIT. And I was actually, what kicked me over to be a veteran was they had to keep me in until my knees got good enough that they could release me.
okay. So they wouldn't have to pay for the knees?
Yeah. And then once I got out, I had to go to the Veterans Hospital to kind of keep up with it for a few years. But by the time I graduated with my degree, I was pretty good.
Good. So now you, at the beginning, if I heard you correctly, said that you were a licensed tank driver.
I was.
Oh, that caught my attention right on. So I want
It
to make sure
was
we
so
don't
much
mention.
fun. I volunteered because I was going to school when I got out, and I was drilling in Memphis, and so I volunteered in the summer to be part of the convoy and to do extra things. And part of that was I had to get licensed for the big trucks and the tank. And so then when we drilled with the National Guard unit out of Knoxville, down at Fort Hood, Texas one year, and we had so much fun driving on those, big hills down at Fort Hood, trying to avoid the crevices. Yeah. But I think there were storms coming in. And so then we had to follow the helicopters. They had to lead us out because the tornadoes and bad storms were coming in. But it was fun.
Those storms on the west side of Tennessee are just hellacious. Just hellacious. I lived in Collierville for 3 years, and they would say, okay, Shelby County, you're clear. Well, I was right on the border of the next county, literally like one street. And it was like, no, I'm not clear. We're still in the middle of this. So, yeah. So I can understand that would be a little difficult to see your way out with that. Did you feel safe though in it a little bit from the storms, from the tornadoes?
I felt good, probably because we didn't know what was going on. We called them fly guys, but the fly guys, they had them throughout the area that we were at because we had several helicopters. But they were telling us once we got down off the hills at Fort Hood, they were telling us, how bad it was. So, and they apparently traveled well. They had a metal suitcase full of alcohol. They had been to the grocery store, and so they had prepared to cook all this meat. So we got back to the barracks at Fort Hood and had a huge cookout party. It was nice.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, waiting on the storms to by.
I see y'all out there. I just can envision them. I'm actually kind of having visions of the TV series MASH, right? And they're all out there, here's this, they're holding on to their hats with, and a little spatula in the other. And
it was a cinder block building, but we were good. We just couldn't cook in it. So they were taking turns going outside to cook. They even had a grill. So yeah, I'm telling you, they travel well.
Nice. That is nice.
Yeah.
So outside of that, did you have any other things come up that you were like, oh my gosh, I can't believe they're having us do this?
No. I mean, we went through RTEP to make, readiness test. And I actually got an award for that. But we just did it, My husband, we were on alert, when Desert Storm started kicking up. And we were living in Texas at the time. I was still attached to the unit in Memphis because they had linguists from all over the U.S. part of that unit, because that's what the unit did. And I didn't think about it. I'm thinking I need my stuff ready to go where I can find it. So I had it at the door. My husband was stressing out about it. He's not military. And he finally asked me, he goes, could you not put that at the door? Yeah. So, yeah.
Yeah, that is a hard time, I think, for a lot of people. And I remember seeing the news and saying that they were deploying however many back then, and just thinking, oh my gosh, this is insane, the number. And yeah, and people that I didn't know, of course, I don't know back then that I even knew any veterans, that were next to me or around me that I'm aware of.
Our Arabic speakers went first.
Yeah.
They volunteered early on in it. So they were already gone.
Okay. And so did you ever have an opportunity then outside of going with your daughter overseas to have to use your
No. But the military got there was this huge tussle about where women were located, in the military and what their job uh, was. And ours were on the front line. So we had a 3-minute life expectancy. So when all of that was going on, which is nothing now, but back then when they were all upset about it, we got kicked out of the unit. So they kicked us to Kentucky, to a unit that didn't deploy to the front line. So kind of once they did that, I chose not to re-up.
So your thought on that at the time was what? When they did that, what did you think of that?
It was my job. Just because I'm female, and I think most females would say, we'll fight more and harder for our family than most men. We're not necessarily always going to, that mama bear thing.
I do.
And they call me that at work, mama bear. But, yeah. But it was something they had to work out, though.
And they have, I think, for the most part.
My cousin, I guess she's my second niece. She's a pilot in the Navy.
Nice.
I've got another one that's high up in the Navy. I've got cousins and nieces in the military. Yeah, that are gone. They're not fighting those same battles, although I'm sure they're fighting something.
Right. Yeah. And nowadays, who knows where anybody is. But yeah, that's, I understand exactly what you're talking about as far as that goes, that, you volunteer for a reason, and, they kind of take it away. I can imagine, that would be a little devastating, I think. And so I could understand that. So how long then did you serve in total?
8 years total.
8 years. Wonderful.
Year and a half active, the rest reserve.
Okay. And so what was your transition like then back to civilian life?
Busy, because I got out off of active duty in December, got engaged in February, got married in June. So between December and June, I did pretty much various active duty trainings. Yeah. I went to work for one job, and they asked me to set up their mailing system, which, okay, I can organize like the best of them. And watching and paying attention to what was going on around me, I'm like, is this legal? He was a multi-level marketing type deal in Memphis. And so I went to my commander about it, and he was like, I don't think that is. He did some checking. He goes, this guy's under federal indictment. And I was like, well, I resigned. So I had a clearance. I couldn't be associated with that.
Right.
And so it was like, so they sent me to a bunch of trainings. So I did trainings off and on for 3 months. And then the week before I got married, I was on annual training for 2 weeks. So nice. I'm out there in the field trying to roll up my sleeves so I don't have the farmer's tan on my wedding dress. So, yeah.
So let's see. So Jova Q says the American public is not ready nor willing to see their mothers, sisters, and daughters die in war or conflict. However, there are females serving in all type of capacities in unit that is directly close and engage with the enemy, which is very true. I know, I think overall in society as a whole, at least here in America, women are very cherished, if you will, for the most part,
Yeah.
thought of. And so I can understand that. I think that, the view that he has there makes sense. But, we as women are like, we can do it too.
I think the difference is they want to.
Mm-hmm.
They want to. And we have just as much drive. And because we know if we don't take care of business over there, it's coming here.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think we can be a little more ruthless about that than men can.
Yeah, I know, my thought on it, and it's just my thought. So, if y'all out there listening in the chats, this is just my opinion. So just to clarify that, I think, when it comes to certain things, women tend to multitask a lot faster in our minds. And, with, raising the kids and cleaning the house, taking care of the house and cooking dinner and working and this and that. And, just all these things all that come at us all at once. And, so for us to take on additional responsibilities of something of that nature, I think in our minds, it's like, no big deal,
Well, and I will say when 9/11 happened, my old lieutenant, who by then was a major and was working at the Pentagon, she was not there that day, thank God, when the Pentagon got hit.
Mm-hmm.
But she called me. She's like, if you want to join, we'll get the orders for you. You'll be with me. She called me her assistant the whole time. So I actually drilled twice a month. I drilled once with the unit and once as her assistant because she used my organizational skills. But she's like, I could use you. But by that time, I was working. My husband had a back injury, wasn't working, and I had 2 kids.
Yeah.
And I had to tell her no. But let me tell you, it was the hardest decision I've ever made.
Yeah. And now, so here you are now, and your kids are grown.
Yes.
And, and they've got their lives now. And yeah, so I understand that. In my mind, that makes a lot of sense. Christine White, she says she's seen the enemy eye to eye. Navy doesn't care, guy or girl. Just do your job and cover your family's six.
That's right. Yep.
And it's a preference. I mean, I can tell you, right out of, my ASVAB scores were really high. I got the call from every single branch, and I didn't want to go military specifically. I actually looked into the FBI, and because I love solving things and don't get any ideas, but
I think I'm too old for the FBI.
So, well, I know I am. And then I looked, of course, and I can tell you, I am not very sporty. I don't know what other word to use. I mean, physically,
Athletic.
I don't. That's the one. My mind just went completely blank. I don't like to run. It's like, I do my so many steps a day, and then it's like, sure, I'm done. But I mean, I used to run a mile a day back when I was a teenager, but the drive, the self-motivation, I just didn't have it. So when I looked at what the website was on, what they had for the FBI, and I was like, I can't do a single pull-up. And unless they're going to let me do girl push-ups, I'm out.
I'm laughing. Ashley's had 2 offers. That's my daughter. Ashley's had 2 offers from the FBI.
Oh, nice. Nice.
She turned them down both times because she says, guys, I'm going to law school.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. And that's just fine. We all know it internally, male or female, what our capabilities are. And probably I know if it was something that I really had my heart set on doing, I would have put in that effort. I would have done what I
Right.
needed to do to achieve that. I just wasn't there. It's like
Yeah.
I just got done with high school, and that was an effort. And it was like, I don't want to be told what to do anymore.
Yeah. I
So
get that.
yeah.
Yeah.
So when you got out, did you then you said you went to the VA, so you had a resource there?
Such as it was, yes.
Yeah.
I would say they didn't know what to do with a female at the time because VAs weren't used to seeing females. So they really didn't know what to do. And so they finally just gave me a handicap. And that was just so I was at school at MTSU. And so that enabled me to park closer to the building, which pissed the teachers off because they didn't have handicap parking at the time. And so I just took a teacher spot and parked next to the building. And, accounting books are thick. Got to carry them all. And I only had classes on Tuesday, Thursday because I was living in Nashville at the time, driving down. But it gave me enough to get me off my knees all the time so they could heal. It took several years. I want to say a good 4 or 5 years before my knees didn't hurt all the time.
Did they ever figure out what had happened, what was wrong?
They just said I wore them down to the bone.
Okay. And so you didn't have surgery then, or?
Mm-mm. No.
And wow, that's
Yeah.
great that they were able to recover.
Oh, yeah, very much so. My biggest fear at the time was I going to be able to walk down the aisle or be on crutches? Because I was on crutches the week before. So,
Oh, wow.
yeah, but I walked. So I was thrilled.
And the rest is history, right?
Yeah. Many, many years later, we're still married.
Congratulations to the both of you.
Thank you.
So, have you been back to the VA since, or any other resources that you've utilized for veterans?
No, my doctor asked me because I've been all of a sudden have all these allergies and autoimmune stuff going on. They've asked me, could it have been something you were exposed to in the military? And I was like, well, I don't know. And you think they're going to admit it? So, and I'm flying blind too. So, I was wondering about that. How many people, because I know that the Marine Post isn't far from Fort Jackson. And they have all that stuff they found out about the Marine Post. Well, I'm like, did any of that happen at Fort Jackson? Could that, even explain what's going on now?
Are you talking in Lejeune, Camp Lejeune? Okay.
Yep.
Well, yeah, that's definitely, a good question.
Yeah.
Because it was the water, right?
It was the water.
Yeah.
It's fine though. But, I would be interested to find out.
Yeah. And they haven't found any, what have they done for the allergies? Because I know, explain maybe a little bit for our listeners, kind of how in depth the allergy problem is for you.
Right. So about 2008, I started having problems with my trunk area. You couldn't touch me without me going, just, you didn't see that, but I was like, and so I also had endometriosis. So during the time we were searching to figure out why you couldn't touch me in my trunk area, I had a hysterectomy. And so it briefly got better. And then within a year or so, it was all back. And So from 2010 to 2017, I kept chasing it to the point that at one point they're like, oh, it's just in your head. And I was like, no, it's not in my head. So in 2017, they finally figured out my allergies were causing me to have asthma. And it was my lungs were so inflamed and irritated that that was the trunk area. So from my breast down, you couldn't touch me. I can't tell you how many times I had to go have breast exams and x-rays to make sure I didn't have cancer. But it was my lungs. It was my lungs. And so once the lung doctor looked and he said, you don't have a problem with your lungs. It's allergy induced. So then I had to go see an allergist. And so they slowly started the process of trying to figure out what I'm allergic to. So I'm allergic to everything outside in Middle Tennessee. A big surprise if you live in Middle Tennessee, it's common. But I have to wear a mask to go outside.
Yeah, she was wearing a mask before
COVID.
Way before COVID. So yeah. Before it was even thought of or fashionable.
Yeah. So when I was working in Murfreesboro, if they started mowing around the building, the secretary would warn me, Suzie, the mowers are here, and I would have to pack up all my stuff and come home because our windows and back door wasn't secured enough that it would come in the building and I'd have an asthma attack. Mm-hmm. Well, then it just kept getting worse. And then we found out I was allergic to foods. So I'm allergic to eggs, barley, rye. And if you're listening, there goes all my Guinness, my whiskey, my scotch. I'm not real happy about that. And I ate eggs all the time. So I can't have duck eggs. Don't know why, but I can have duck eggs. But I'm also allergic to cinnamon and any pepper that's green. So like if it's a bell pepper, once it turns yellow, completely yellow or red, I can eat it. But there's something about that green pepper, jalapeno. So I had to get red chilies. So it's really changed the way we eat. I'm very careful about what I eat. I now have a card that when we go out to eat, I just give them of my allergies to try to make sure I don't get something. Because when I epi, I have to epi, take 2 Benadryl, epi again, probably about 10 minutes later. So it usually takes 3 epis and 6 Benadryls to get me under control. So I don't know what happened. I've never had asthma before. Never had allergy reactions to food before. Prior to that, the only thing I was allergic to was tetanus and yellow jackets.
Wow.
Yeah. So I don't know what happened.
Did you ever have to go when you were in basic and do the whole gas mask?
Yes.
Thing.
Yeah. And everybody used the same ones, so they didn't seal. Yeah. The gas. Yep.
And you did well with that.
Well, I mean,
at the time,
I was running and snotty like everyone else.
Right. But nothing that you can think of that happened at the time.
And actually, they gave me an EpiPen that I had to carry because of the yellow jackets, because they were everywhere. So, I carried that.
Gosh, I can't imagine. A few years back when the price of those EpiPens went through the roof. That wasn't all that long ago. That had to have been really difficult for you if having to use as many as you do.
Yes. So that actually, because I've had to epi a lot this year. Who knew they put cinnamon in sangria? Found that out the hard way. But, or if you got to eat and you tell them you're allergic to something, but they don't tell you they put cinnamon in their sweet potato stuff, I had to epi at work several times. So they actually had to increase my prescription for that. So now I get 4 epis at a time because I use 3 at a time. And
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't have enough if I go somewhere. Because if I have 2 events in a weekend, which has happened, I just use 6 epis. So yeah. But the state, we work for the state. So the state's pretty good. They haven't kicked me off yet.
I doubt they will.
Yeah. Gotta love my state insurance.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great place to work.
Yes.
So, okay. So now you're out of the military for good, and you've gotten a new job. So what was the first job that you got when you were outside of the one that was like the MLM or?
Yeah. Can't work there. I work for the state again because I have a strong public service drive. Yeah. I resigned when I had 2 kids at home and we were still making $20,000 a year. So I couldn't afford the daycare. I think we added up, and that was back when you dry cleaned everything. I think I was making $50 a year after I paid for all the daycare and the gas and the dry cleaning. So I quit to be at home. And then when my husband hurt his back in early 2001, he hurt it late 2020 or 2000. And then his doctor said, he needed time to heal. So I found a job that would make more than $20,000 a year. I needed triple that. So to cover what he was making. And so I went to work, and then I was working there when 9/11 happened, and he was not working.
So you were with the same division the whole time?
No, I was actually working for a car manufacturer.
Oh, okay.
Because I would make more there than I did with the state at the time. Yeah.
Gotcha.
And then once he got better, I went back to the state because I'm sorry. I have a strong public service drive, and I like holding taxpayers accountable, government accountable for funds. And that's important to me. Helping to build a vehicle, not much satisfaction in that. Not that there's anything wrong with that by any stretch,
Right.
It fulfills a need for a lot of people, and that's fine. I just have a different need. So,
yeah.
Yeah.
And so, totally up to you if you want to talk about, what it is you do.
Oh, yeah. I am a deputy chief investigator for our division of investigations at the comptroller's office. So we investigate fraud, waste, or abuse by employees or citizens that are misusing state funds. So we publish our reports. So it's all about transparency. We're not law enforcement, but we do share them with DAs, and we do have a lot of prosecutions. Yeah.
Nice. And you've been doing that
since 2009.
2009. Okay.
Yeah.
And that's something that was unique for us here. I can't say that I've ever seen anything like that in Reno, where I had lived, or Montana either. So it was quite interesting to see. And I see these videos that are out there on YouTube or LinkedIn, or just the things about, if you see fraud or abuse of state funds, your government funds, to, and they list a phone number, and I'm assuming that's the number that basically is going to get to you or your division.
Yes. Yeah. Every call, when they call that number, comes to our division. And then we go through every call, every allegation, and figure out who's got the resources to handle it and where it needs to go to best get handled. Yeah.
Which is awesome. And you know, it took me a little bit to really understand when it came to that, as far as, you know, like booster clubs and things, that they do receive grants, and that's why you see a lot of those are coming up. So that's actually very interesting to me, because like I said, it just coming from, you know, another state that doesn't have this kind of thing, it was really interesting to see. And I was like, a booster club? Wait, oh yeah, I guess they do get grants.
Well,
Government
they're
grants.
quasi.
Mhm.
So they're actually raising money in the name of the school for that function, and that's where we get in.
Okay.
And actually, they passed a law. Gosh, I think it's probably been 2 years now, that if a DA can request us and TBI, and that's Tennessee Bureau of Investigation, to work a joint investigation on private entities that have a significant community impact. So we've investigated misuse of funds at hospitals, a church where the treasurer just stole all the money from the church. You know, we've had senior citizen centers, you know, because it's a big community impact. Hospital or doctor's offices.
And
Yeah.
yeah, and I guess that makes a lot of sense, and that's really good to know. So for those of you here in Tennessee,
Yeah.
something to keep an eye out for if you happen to see something. You know, there are numbers out there. You can go out and Google it and find that.
Right. And all our reports are public, so it's on the Tennessee Comptroller outward facing website.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we volunteer fire departments, you know.
Well, and I can imagine back when COVID really hit and people were at home and, you know, maybe not working, it really, you know, probably saw an increase in that, or did you not?
Well, we never stopped working, as you know.
Right, right.
We just work from home. But I think a lot of things got caught because they were getting away with the theft, but now you had to be there to get the bank statements. Or maybe because of COVID, the bank statement, somebody else was getting the bank statements. So we've had several cases, I'll say, where it got caught because people were sent home and somebody else started getting the information.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So going kind of back a little bit, as far as your military career that you had, and how do you think then that the military experience shaped your values and your perspective on life? I mean, obviously you're very prone to service, you know, for the people and in our country. Anything outside of that?
Well, you've known me for a while now.
I have.
Believe it or not, I used to be shy.
Really?
And I was quiet. Nobody believes me when I tell them that. So I get my daughter so much better than anybody else because I was like that at her age, very shy, quiet. But I also was going to stand for what I believed in, and I wouldn't back down. So, and I think that grew in the military. And I remember thinking of everything that was thrown at me in the military. And I still came out on top. So it's just a confidence that you can handle anything.
Yeah.
And even when you can't, you put one foot in front of the other and keep going until you can.
But that's a great way of looking at that. That's
Yeah.
really good advice. Just keep looking forward.
Yeah, you can't stop, and you can't let it paralyze you. You know.
Yeah.
You got to keep moving forward.
So what did you enjoy most when you were in the Army? What was there anything in particular that outside of the tank driving that you really enjoyed the most
Well,
that
I
you can
mean,
remember?
if I wanted to piss them off, I called it, "Oh, we're going camping," which called bivouacking. But after they just did some stuff. They would come through, and you only had a few minutes to eat, and so you're shoving food in your mouth. You're out in the field, sitting on a stump if you were lucky, sitting on the ground if you weren't. And I remember it wasn't my drill sergeant, but somebody else came through and tipped my tray over in the dirt, you know. And I thought I could get upset about this or I could just keep eating. And what he didn't know was I came from a family of 9. And with 9 kids, there's a little bit of fussing going on and claiming your territory. And so I just brushed everything off and kept eating. And he told me later, he came up to me later, he goes, "I really thought you were going to, start crying like a girl." And I was like, just looked at him and I said, "I got 8 brothers and sisters. You're going to have to up your game." So yeah.
So did you get a lot of letters and such when you were at basic then?
Yeah, I did. Keith, my husband, he wrote me every week. I would call him usually late at night when everybody was in bed. And my mom wrote me every week.
Nice. Nice.
Yeah.
Boy, it really was an experimental platoon if you got to be on the phone.
Yeah. Yeah.
So obviously then you stayed in touch, I'm assuming, with the friends that you made or while you were there, or have you?
No,
No?
because we all went different ways. There was a couple people that I would have wanted to stay in touch with, but it was just so discombobulated. We had a girl in our unit who was Amish, and it was she was from New York, and it was her mother's dying wish that she join the military. And
Wow.
so somebody stole her clothes while she was in the shower, and it really pissed me off. And she had to go to counseling, which I was impressed that they let her go to counseling every week, to deal with her mother's death in this new environment. And she had such a hard time because she wasn't used to preservatives and canned goods, that tasted so different.
Yeah.
And so they had put her in counseling, I think, because she was losing so much weight. But let me tell you, she was courageous beyond measure. Yeah. And what she put up with to stick to it, was impressive.
Wow. Wow. That's great. See, Jim says, kudos on your job for accountability and transparency because there's a ton of it. It's become a thing where spend what we got last year, whether we need it or not, for fear of losing it. And Tennessee Goddess says, yeah, lots of hospitals and medical practices are getting caught. So,
Yes.
so we appreciate that and the work that you do with that as well.
Well, thank you. I love my job. That's my whole, soapbox is holding people accountable.
And that's important. In my mind too, I'm a lot like you in that regard. I believe in everybody being treated equally. and
Right.
and you see a lot of that where it just doesn't happen.
Yeah.
And it's very frustrating. So
We have several military in our division. So.
Yes. And so I need to actually start getting some phone numbers and getting in contact with them.
Yeah, I'll send you a list.
I appreciate that because I know some have been deployed as well. So they've got, different stories. And so
One
obviously
of our new investigators that started last year, She was deployed with her husband. Both of them were.
Oh,
So
wow.
you can get a twofer there.
Yes, that would be a great show.
And she
I
works
think
in
we'd
your
all enjoy it.
area.
You'll have to shoot me a message on that.
Oh.
Yeah, because I probably know who you're talking about, but at the moment the name is not,
Yeah.
isn't coming through. But so for any females specifically who are considering joining the military, particularly, let's say, the Army, what words of wisdom do you have for them? Any advice?
Persevere. Well, I'm going to say it's probably different now than it was then. But I would just say persevere. Persevere. You know, and I used to tell myself they're paid to break me down,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm being paid to take it. And
It's a contract. Both sides. That's right.
And I would tell myself, and the whole time, even after, you know, because when I was out in California, I was at the Presidio Defense Language Institute. We would still have, you know, inspections and brass parties, and which is not really a party, people. Well, y'all all know because you're all military.
Well, not everybody that's listening is military. But
It's where you get the Brasso out and the toothbrushes, and you're cleaning everything that's brass. And the military loves brass, so you're cleaning everything to make it shine for some inspection that's coming up. And you're cleaning grout with toothbrushes and everything. I mean, it's a mess. So I'm like, you know what? I'm getting paid if I'm cleaning a toilet or if I'm out in school learning my job.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't matter. I signed up to do what they need me to do. So if this is what they need me to do at this time, then I'm going to give it my best. And so I had that attitude, and I think that kept a lot of turmoil away that maybe some people, this ain't my job. Well, kind of is.
Right? It's whatever they tell you to do is your job.
Right. It is. It is. So, which, I mean, now, did I want to kill my roommate who let a jar of kimchi explode in the room?
Oh.
You bet. Yeah. So everybody on the floor was helping us clean that up because it was the night before inspection. But yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Fun stuff.
So, gosh, that's crazy. So, being in the military, how has your perspective or your perspective on patriotism in the military service, has that changed, or has it changed your view since your time in?
In what way?
Well, has your perspective on patriotism changed since being in the
I've always been
military?
patriotic. Now, I will say this. You run into a few people who are conscientious objectors. And I'm like, why did you join the military if you're a conscientious objector? I don't understand. And I had a long talk with my uncle about that. And he was like, you know, you may have to kill somebody. And I said, if you can't defend your country with a gun or in any way necessary, you don't need to be in there. Some recruiter came to the kids' high school and talked to Isabella. And she came home and she's like, oh, I want to join the Navy. You get this great education and you get to see the world. And I was like, hold up. She does not have the personality that would pick up a gun at all. Plus, she's autistic. And I was like, I talked to her for 3 days and had her go online and do research because, you know, kids don't believe their parents. And she finally, I said, if that recruiter, you ever see him again, you need to tell him to quit lying to students, you know, because what they were telling them was not that, yes, it's a serious job. The side benefits are that you can get an education, you can see the world, But when the call comes, you have to be ready.
Right.
And so that's a pet peeve of mine.
They don't give you the whole story. It's about the numbers.
It is.
Yeah.
But she was ready to go sign. And I was just like, hold up. I don't think so. And on the other hand, I think Ashley would have been great in the military had she wanted to do that. And then, I think it needs to be a calling. I do think it can straighten a lot of kids out. I don't think it's for everybody. But not everybody is in tune with who they are at that age. And I had to grow up so fast, moving around so much, and all the family turmoil, changes and whatnot. I was pretty in tune with who I was and where I wanted to be. So.
Awesome. So anybody out there, if y'all have any questions for Suzie, go ahead and put those in the chats now. So Tennessee Goddess said that she actually had joined the Marine Corps in 1988, but parted ways pretty early on in our relationship. But that whole effort of volunteering to begin with, I think is huge. I think that you really don't know until you actually are there and trying to see if that's something that you can do. Because like you said, a lot of times the recruiters don't give you that whole picture. And so,
they're not all created equal.
Right.
You and I have talked about that before, each of the branches have different emphasis. So you need to know what you're willing to accept and or not have. But when you're looking at those branches, if you're wanting family support, don't join the Marines. Air Force had the best family support. I think Navy and Army has pretty good family support. But everything I'm hearing back then and now, Marines not so much.
Yeah, and Killian said, unfortunately, recruiters aren't obligated to give out every bit of information, which, obviously, I think if they did, the numbers would be probably a lot lower than what they have been. So, that makes sense. It's all about, the numbers at this point. I can say that with our middle son, we were very fortunate that everything they told him, it was very straight up, and he had no expectations that were just out there. They were, and still today they check up on him all the time, and
it's good.
Yeah, so it is. It's really it really depends, because then there's I've heard of other recruiters, all sorts of different branches where they're just all about the numbers, and once they sign, their work is done, and they move on into the next one. So so to find the right one, I think that really is watching out for your better interests is very hard to find. And when you do, you definitely got to make sure you give them the accolades that they deserve, because they're really hard sometimes to come by. So anybody have any other questions out there? Oh, let's see. Tennessee Goddess said that I was ready for everything that was going to be thrown at me. Wasn't expecting to be medically discharged. And that happens actually to a lot of people.
Yes.
And so definitely understand that. Let's see. Jim says, Suzie, so sorry and bummer on hearing about your severe allergy issues. I'm sure your allergist shared several things. Autoimmune lowered is part of it. Vitamin C is good dose. Zinc, magnesium.
I take those.
There you go. Yeah. It's, and to find out, it doesn't hurt to go in and talk to the VA or anybody else. And there's tons of nonprofits out there that have access to different doctors and stuff, and say, hey, what about this? And is it possible? Or,
Yeah.
because what's the worst they can say? No.
Yeah.
So, well, I sincerely appreciate you coming on, taking the time away from your family and joining us for a conversation. And it's always great to get a little bit more insight. And you're such a wonderful person, and just
Thank
just
you.
for knowing you the few short years that I've known you, and you're doing great work. And again, thank you so very much for your service. Does anybody else out there have anything? Jason says, thank you, Suzie.
Hey, Jason.
But yeah, so we're going to go ahead. If we don't have any others, I'm going to go ahead. We'll get a little music going, and we'll start getting some things kind of wrapped up a little bit. Let's see if we can hear any sound. Do we hear any music?
Do anything?
No, you just sit there and look pretty. It's all good.
I'd have put makeup on if I'd known it was going to be this close.
There we go. So Killian wants to know, do you have any experience alongside Marines? Did you have any trainings with them or anything?
When I was in DLI, we had Marines there. And so we had some Marines in our classes. Yes.
Yeah.
And then actually, one of the people in my unit, she was married to a Marine, and, they were doing their best to make it work, but they were having trouble to get to the same post or the same city.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
Yeah. Marines at that time didn't care.
And we're talking about, when you say Marines, you're talking more about the
logistics.
Command? Okay. Yeah.
Logistics. Yeah. But no, the people were great. I know a bunch of people that were in the Marines, and I wouldn't say anything bad about them.
Always good. Jim says, thank you for your service and for sharing. What bases were you stationed at?
I was at Fort Jackson, and then Presidio, the Defense Language Institute, and then I was at Air Force Base, San Angelo Air Force Base, and attached to Fort Hood. Yeah. And then I did PLDC at Fort Benning.
Nice. Yep. All right. Well, let's see if we can get some. I hear music. All right. Anybody else with any questions for Suzie? So, Jim says again, yeah. Oh, that was the old one. Hang on. I just looked over him. That was his old message to say thank you. So, well, I most definitely appreciate taking the time, and
well, thank you.
Tell your family hello and appreciate you. Oh, wait. Jim says, it's a small world. Ever hear of Jen McAfee?
That sounds familiar.
You have to think on that one. See what pops in your head. So he knows a couple of Army.
Okay.
So all right. Well, everybody, I think we're going to go ahead. We're going to get this wrapped up. Suzie, if you want to just stay put there for a minute. And she's a colonel now, apparently.
Okay. Wow.
All right, everybody. We appreciate you coming out and enjoying the conversation. Thank you. And we will see you again next week at 6 p.m. Central Time.